Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the King and Pocket Aces. I'm one of your hosts, Anthony Aniano, and joining me, as he always does, the king of fantasy sports, my good friend, Mr. Scott Engel. Scott, how are we doing today?
Good, and if you didn't notice, I am now fully representing the first professional fantasy football franchise that represents New York City, the New York Bodega Cats, part of the Hall of Fantasy League, run by RotoBaller and the RotoBaller crew and former New York Giants running back Rashad Jennings. I have my general manager and coach's hat and gear. You can also get your own at thehofl.com and also become a stakeholder in the New York Bodega Cats, which is going to be run by myself, Real Talk Raf from RotoBaller, and also Rashad Jennings. We are going to bring a championship to Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, and the Bronx, and you can be a part of it.
Yeah, excellent stuff. I just pulled up the website here as well. Going to be following along as you and Raf represent the RotoBaller crew coming out of the New York region. Guys, don't forget as well, head over to RotoBaller.com. Check out everything we have there. The main page, premium package, expert chats. Whether you play season long or DFS formats or both, RotoBaller.com has you covered. Football, baseball, basketball, MMA, esports, NASCAR, PGA, sports betting. RotoBaller.com, the place to be. Sign up now for any of our premium packages, including the football package as you get ready for your drafts, using the promotional code KING, representing Scott, or ACES, representing myself, and save yourself a little bit of money in the process. Scott, RotoBaller.com has a great deal with FFPC as well, yes?
Yes, rotoballer.com/FFPC. Get a discount on your first team. All kinds of drafts right going now. Best ball, seasonal, high stakes, super flex, best ball, slim. And when you want to get practice, go to rotoballer.com and check out the new mock draft assistant, which does two things. You can do a mock draft against the computer in any format, any style in just a few minutes. And it also helps you in draft with your picks.
So, yeah, great stuff. Head on over there, rotoballer.com, RotoBaller's YouTube channel, as we prepare you for the football season, get you through the rest of the baseball season. Make sure you check it all out as well. All right, Scott. So since we last talked, the big news, the Carson Wentz foot surgery, and we couldn't have a more vague timeline for his return, right? 5 to 12 weeks. 5 weeks, you're talking about kind of right around the beginning of the season. 12 weeks, we're talking end of October. Now, in a 12-team redraft league, to be honest, Carson Wentz not really getting drafted. You could put him maybe as a low-end quarterback too, but there is fallout from the Carson Wentz injury, the wide receiver core, the running back core. So let's start. And the Colts have made it clear again. They say they're now trading for a veteran. That was the news that came out this morning. It looks like Jacob Eason is at least leading the way to be the opening day starter, which is going to be interesting as well. Let's start in the backfield, though, for the Colts. Jonathan Taylor, Nyheim Hines. Some of our RotoBaller friends have predicted Jonathan Taylor to rush for 5 million yards this year. Okay? Nonetheless, Jonathan Taylor's value, does it take a hit without Carson Wentz? Does it get a boom without Carson Wentz? What do you think?
Well, Wentz, the published reports say 5 to 12 weeks. Could be. It depends on how he heals. Nobody can predict that. You're going to say, Scott, Anthony, how many times is he going to miss? We can't predict how anything is going to heal. Not even the doctors can predict. So while he's out, there are two experts and analyst schools of thought. One will get a ton more volume, that this is going to boost his value. And on the other hand, the offense is not going to be as good. I am in the latter camp. The offense is not going to be as good without Wentz. Taylor will get more defensive attention, become a higher defensive focus. Without Carson Wentz, teams will dare them to throw the ball. Now, some scouting reports that I've seen on CBSSports.com have said, that don't underestimate Eason. He's got a very powerful arm and he's very accurate, but still, he lacks experience. So we have to assume we're going to have to bump Jonathan Taylor from the mid part of the first round, maybe towards the late part of the first round. Not drastic, but there may be less touchdown opportunities. And while he did catch 30-plus passes, catching is not the strongest suit of his game. So we might see more work from Nyheim Hines. Now, some people are predicting Hines that this boosts his value because they're going to play from behind and use him a lot. But we don't really know how good Jacob Eason is going to be. You can't always predict game script. A lot of people will say, and that, okay, they're going to be playing from behind. It's good for the receiving game. But if the offense doesn't have good quarterbacking, you could be playing from behind and still going 3 and out. And throwing swing passes out of the backfield to your running back is still, not going to necessarily get you caught up. So while it does elevate Hines just a little bit, I still think, he's more of a mid-range RB4 at best. This is going to be a very unpredictable situation. Maybe a tiny rise to Nyheim Hines. They could go to a committee here because they want to change up their looks at running back. You could see some Marlon Mack. So I think it really does cap the upside. You might see more targets from Hines, but what's really the upside? It caps the upside of all the running backs.
Yeah, so Jonathan Taylor, current ADP across consensus sites, has him as running back 6. So that's ahead of Ezekiel Elliott, ahead of Nick Chubb, ahead of Austin Eckler. Because of this injury, does that change now in your mind? Are you taking Elliott ahead of Jonathan Taylor? Are you taking Nick Chubb ahead of Jonathan Taylor?
In my rankings on rotoballer.com and enter King at checkouts a special discount to see them. I already had Elliott ahead of him because I felt like, Taylor still had to establish himself over a full season and he doesn't catch passes quite as good as Elliott. But if somebody wanted to take Taylor over Elliott, it's not a vehement argument. But now, to me, he definitely goes behind Chubb. He definitely goes behind Eckler. Chubb is such a great runner. So he's probably going to go towards the back of my top 10. I'm not going to get him a major ding because, look, Wentz could be back by week 3 or something like that.
Right.
But the more I find out, the more he's going to get docked.
Yep. And you brought up a good point about Jacob Eason, right? A 2020 4th-round pick from the Colts. Some people in that draft had him going a little bit earlier for the reasons you mentioned. Accurate, strong arm, not very mobile. Well, he has his opportunity now, and we see what he does with it. Now, what about the passing game in Indianapolis? Scott, you and I were on the same page on Michael Pittman. Okay, every draft I've done, whether alone or with you, Michael Pittman has been a target of ours. In fact, in the FSGA draft, we continue to take hits. And we haven't even played a game yet because our wide receiver core was Michael Thomas, Odell Beckham, and Michael Pittman. Okay, so we're just getting slapped around, and it's only early August. How does this affect your draft value for Pittman and for T.Y. Hilton?
I had Pittman as wide receiver 26, expecting a major breakthrough year from him, as I've said on past editions of the King of Pocket Aces. But now I have him back at 34. I still like him, but only when Wentz is in there and I know he's healthy, and that's unpredictable. So for now, he was a high-end wide receiver 3 for me. Now he's a low-end wide receiver 3. Paris Campbell, not really somebody high on my radar at all. T.Y. Hilton's best years are behind him. I will say one thing defensively, though. When you were drafting defenses, remember this. Unless you get one of those top 2 or 3 units, you're streaming every week. So you should look at week 1 matchups to draft your defense. And the Seahawks defense, which was one of the best in the NFL the second half of last year when Jamal Adams was healthy and they had Carlos Dunlap, they get the Colts in the first week.
Interesting. So now what's going to be fun now is potentially is the Colts are now being added, at least early on, to the list of teams to play a defense against. Until we see how long Wentz is out, what Jonathan Taylor can do without Carson Wentz. So that's going to be interesting. But a big
also the tight ends, Anthony. Sometimes the young quarterback, not always, but sometimes the young quarterback will look to the tight ends. It'll be interesting to see how this helps Mo Alley Cox and Jack Doyle. I did like Alley Cox as a deep sleeper, even before this injury, because Wentz did have some better tight ends in Philadelphia, but does have a radar for the tight ends.
Yep, fair enough. I mean, in a tight end premium league, you could take a flyer on either one of those tight ends. But I agree with you. Higher upside potentially with Mo Alley Cox. Jack Doyle may be a safer week in and week out floor than Mo Alley Cox. But again, this offense now is in shambles. But, and this is part of the argument. And listen, you and I have already done a bunch of drafts. This is part of the argument why wait as long as you can to draft. Because who knows? Carson Wentz could be there week 2, and all of this talk will be forgotten because the Colts offense will be operating at full strength sooner rather than later. Just got to see how it goes. Scott, in other news, okay, and I want to mention this because I just want to know if there's anything to see here or if there's not, okay? The New Orleans Saints, no Michael Thomas, new quarterback situation. We know all of that. They've brought in veteran running back Devonta Freeman. Even though they have Alvin Kamara, even though they have Latin Murray, is this a response to losing Michael Thomas, or is this a situation that genuinely we just don't really care about?
I think the Chris Hogan signing was more of a response to that. Freeman's just depth right now, I think. I can't, maybe they throw him a few passes out of the backfield, but not anything to cut into Alvin Kamara's workload. This is like non-news to me unless you play in like a 40-team league or an all NFC South league. It's not. I'm more interested to see, Marquez Callaway, etc., and some of the maybe undrafted free agents that can make a dent here, and the quarterback battle in New Orleans, where I'm really leaning towards Jameis Winston. I know a lot of people on the outside will talk about Taysom Hill because they see that as a better fit, but I don't think that's the way they're looking at that in the building in New Orleans. Still got to be played out, but, Winston still has that pedigree. He's looking really good in camp. They brought him in for a reason. I know they're paying Taysom Hill for a reason, but he's a very unique player. They can work him in gadgets and tight end and stuff like that. All the reports have me indicating that Winston's going to be the guy. So in a best ball draft, like I was in the 17th round of the Raz Bowl, I just took Jameis Winston as my third quarterback.
Okay, now another veteran signing, and this one may be a little bit more of an alert. The Giants bring in Alfred Morris. Now, Alfred Morris himself is not a interesting fantasy player, but they do bring him in along with who they signed in the offseason, Devonta Booker. Does Alfred Morris coming in scare you away even more from Saquon Barkley?
What scares me is not Alfred Morris, but, just reading a lot about Saquon Barkley. Now, he has so much upside that he could end up the number 1 or number 2 running back in fantasy football. But, Virginia Zakis of Inside Injuries, who's also on The Athletic, I've known Virginia for years, and she's a tremendous fantasy injury analyst. And she wrote one of her recent mailbag columns on The Athletic. It's just something you have to read, where she talked about that, people are still drafting Barkley in the first round, but she doesn't know why, because she could see him missing 2 to 6 games this year, maybe early in the season, because even though the knee has sufficiently healed, and I'm just paraphrasing here because I'm not a medical expert, I'm a fantasy analyst, that remember, there was more than just one tear there. And everything around the knee still needs time to heal. And there's a lot of danger of a hamstring injury when he's coming back from this. So that's what's worried me is about Barkley. Now, we can't predict injuries. There's a lot of upside, etc. But with Saquon Barkley, I have him more towards the end of the first round. I'm considering moving him into the second because after reading what Virginia said, and I know there's tremendous upside in best ball. Best ball, I worry a little bit less because it's about total points at the end of the year. Even though if you can miss a few games, that's scary. But the early season outlook, I'm concerned about it. And I don't want to take him over an Eckler or a Chubb or stuff like that because when I get more into the range of Barkley or J.K. Dobbins, it becomes much easier. But I'm really, the more we talk about it, and the more I read, it seems like every day and every week I'm getting a little bit more concerned about Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, agree 110% with that. If you had asked me a month ago, I would have said I'm not running scared of Saquon. But over the last month, the news coming out, still on the PUP list, and all of those concerns, you're right. There are healthier running backs out there who we know are going to be on the field week one, barring an injury between now and then.
And here's something else to look at, Ann. I'm sorry.
That's
If
right.
Barkley was to go down, I think that's why they've signed Morris. Because Morris has demonstrated over the last few years, and I joked about it when Cam Akers got injured, which is not a funny thing, but I still said, some point Alfred Morris is going to come and walk off the street and play for somebody. I think they like Devontae Booker because of his pass blocking, but if Barkley were to go down, I would see it as a not very illustrious timeshare between Alfred Morris and Devontae Booker.
Yep, I thought the same thing. Morris between the tackles, Booker catching the ball out of the backfield, kind of running outside the tackles. And that's what I took out of the Alfred Morris signing was you've now created a timeshare to prepare for at least the beginning of the season, maybe without Saquon Barkley. All right, Scott, I want to talk a little bit of tight ends. And for those of you listening or watching on YouTube, sign up, head over to RotoBaller.com, check out our premium rankings, which Scott is a part of. And I want to talk tight ends, but I don't want to talk Kelsey, Waller, Kittle, Mark Andrews. We know those guys are there. Okay, but there's been one interesting trend, and you can see this on the rankings on RotoBaller.com. TJ Hawkinson of the Detroit Lions has now, his ADP has climbed, where he is now going on average before Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts' average ADP has dropped by 14 picks, whereas Hawkinson, the assumption that he's going to be the primary Jared Goff option out of the passing game in Detroit. Are you on board with that line of thinking that now is Hawkinson going as tight end 5 and Kyle Pitts has dropped to tight end 6?
I can be on board with that, yes. I have them ranked right next to each other on RotoBaller.com. And I also have a new article on RotoBaller.com, how to effectively construct your team around Travis Kelce in the first round. And I talk about the tight end outlook there. I mean, the receiving picture, that's the worst receiving picture in the NFL. So it's naturally steps to the forefront. But I think Pitts has more upside, but Hawkinson is the safer pick for volume in terms of targets. But in terms of upside, yardage after the catch might not be great. And he's going to get a lot of defensive attention. So Pitts is more of the upside play, and Hawkinson is more of the safer play. Goff does like to throw to the tight end, and Hawkinson is going to get a ton of volume, but defenses will be aware of that. And Hawkinson has never been a big yardage after the catch guy yet in his career.
Okay, fair enough. Another situation to monitor at the tight end position is on the same team, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, Dallas Goedert. Everybody assumed Zach Ertz was going to be playing elsewhere. There was the Buffalo rumors and everywhere else. Now all reports coming out of Philadelphia, Zach Ertz is staying, and Dallas Goedert is still there. Are we still confidently drafting Dallas Goedert? RotoBaller Rankings has him as tight end 7. Do we still feel good about Goddard? And what are we doing about Ertz? Is Ertz now suddenly, it was only 2 years ago, Zach Ertz was in the Kelsey conversation at the top of the tight end board. Where are we putting Zach Ertz now that we have a pretty good idea he's staying in Philadelphia?
With the first to Hawkinson, I still expect him to be one of the top targets there. I got him in the 10th round of Rasbol. Which is, to me, was a terrific value. I have him ranked 7th. Josh Hayes on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, RotoBaller in the Morning, made some great points that the Eagles will try to showcase him and get him involved, and that at some point he's going to get traded. And this is a guy that posted really good numbers just 2 years ago. So you have to keep Ertz somewhere around your top 15 there, because there's a lot of upside if he does get dealt.
Yeah, Zach Ertz right now on RotoBaller.com is not inside that top 15, which is a surprise. Guys like Gerald Everett, Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, all ranked ahead of Zach Ertz. And in tight end premium, Zach Ertz can be a monstrous find late in the draft, how he's being drafted right now, no?
He can. There's a lot of upside when you're taking flyers later at tight end. It makes sense. I was down on Zach Ertz, but I always listen to other fantasy experts and keep an open mind. I don't pretend I'm a know-it-all. Some people might think I'm a know-it-all, but Josh Hayes really opened my mind and my eyes more to Zach Ertz.
Now, what is your take on Irv Smith of Minnesota?
Uh,
Surprisingly, 13th ranked overall tight end on RotoBall, ranked ahead of Adam Troutman, who you love, I know, ahead of more established players like Evan Ingram and Rob Gronkowski, ahead of Jonnu Smith, ahead of Hunter Henry. Uh, Irv Smith on the fringe of being drafted as a tight end one, Scott.
yeah, I'm not a big fan of all the tight ends you mentioned, except for Troutman. And with Troutman, I have him as my number 10. I'm expecting him as a major breakthrough player right this year. With Smith, it's hard to tell. We heard different reports. He's not going to be a big part of the offense. Then we hear he's going to have a great camp. That's number 2. So with Smith, I think you have Jefferson, you have Thielen, and then you got Dalvin Cook in the backfield. He's like a 4th option on offense, and I think the usage might be inconsistent from week to week. So he's more of a tight end 2 for me.
Did Robert Tonyan's value bump in your mind when Aaron Rodgers showed up in Packers camp?
Yeah, certainly did. I have him as a top 8 tight end right now. I know some people are concerned about touchdown regression, but talking to some Packers beat guys, on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio, they're with me on Tonyan because caught 11 touchdowns 2 years ago. And when Aaron Rodgers gains confidence in a receiver, he's going to keep going back to him in similar situations. So to me, 8+ touchdowns this year. I think the floor is 8 touchdown receptions. Could even get a few more catches.
Yeah, I agree. He's another player of ours in the FSGA. And yes, the Aaron Rodgers going back, I think saves Robert Tonyan's value for this season. Another young tight end that people are high on, Scott, is Cole Kmet. With Chicago should be the primary tight end there, especially once Justin Fields is under center. Cole Kmet ranked number 20 on the RotoBaller tight end rankings. Is he a tight end in your mind that has upside, or is he just a kind of bye-week replacement in your mind?
Tight end is risk reward, and Cole Kmet is risk reward. We saw him start to come on late last year, but Jimmy Graham's still there. That blocks the upside. I think, Graham is like a giant goal line back. So I think Kmet can get some passes outside the 20s, but there's not too much touchdown promise. And I think that's what keeps that's what keeps the upside down.
Because when I look at these rankings, there are tight ends outside the top 20 that I do find interesting, right? Cole Kmet is at number 20. Zach Ertz is number 21. Austin Hooper, 22, who 2 years ago had a monster season his last season in Atlanta. He sits at 22. Anthony Ferkser, and I want to get your thoughts on him, in Tennessee. He's ranked at 25, and he's going to be the starting tight end in Tennessee, where Jonnu Smith was terrific just a year ago.
Yeah, with Ferkser, I actually have him in the top 15 and got him my 3rd tight end in Rasbowl. Showed a lot of touchdown potential and acumen last year. I think Ryan Tannehill, has shown a propensity for throwing to the tight end. So Ferkser is somebody that I really, really like. You also have to watch Gerald Everett in Seattle. Offensive coordinator Shane Waldron knows him well. Russell Wilson wanted him. 3rd in tight ends last year in terms of average yards after the catch. And they're going to play more of a higher percentage passing game, more balanced passing game this year. And he's going to be a part of that. There are a lot of people, including Mike Florio of RotoBaller.com, who like Gerald Everett a lot as a sleeper.
Yep. And I agree with that. And it's funny, you mentioned Ferkser as a 3rd tight end. I got him as my 3rd tight end in Scott Fishbowl, and surprised I was able to get him and expect big things. All right, Scott, before we go, my favorite segment of the show, to keep or not to keep. I'm going to throw some names at you. I'll give you a rough estimate of a round. You let me know, not dynasty, but your standard, keep 3 to 5 round penalty type of deal that a lot of our viewers and listeners participate in. First name. Let's give him round 8. Tom Brady. Keep or not keep?
Yeah, a lot of people would say no because keeper leagues dynasty leagues and keeper leagues are based on youth. But you also have to keep an eye on do you want to win this year? And what's your other quarterback? So there's no straight answer to that. It depends on your situation. If you have Tom Brady and Trevor Lawrence, then I think you have to keep Tom Brady. If you need a quarterback or if you're playing in the league. Quarterbacks, a lot of times we don't keep them, but it depends on what round we have them in. You have to consider Brady as a possible third keeper if you don't have a second running back or a second wide receiver that you really like. If you only have 3 keepers, if you're allowed to keep 4, you consider him. You lean towards no sometimes because of the age, but it all depends on the situation. You want to win this year. And if you can't trust your other quarterback, I think you have to keep Tom Brady.
Okay, fair enough. Now, you mentioned second running backs. Let's talk about a couple of them. Let's say round 4, round 5. Myles Gaskin. Keep or not keep?
As a second running back, I think you have to consider keeping him. Depend on who else is being kept, how many running backs are being kept. There's not a lot. We talked to Alan Poupart of Dolphin Digest on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. He expects Malcolm Brown to be the goal line back and says Gaskin's not a special running back, but he works very hard and he's versatile. He's not an exciting fantasy back, but he can be productive. I would say in the 4th round, no. In the 5th round, yes.
Okay. Same rounds, James Robinson of the Jacksonville Jaguars.
A lot of people...
Before the draft, you would have said yes, but ETN throws a little bit of an issue in there. What do you think about James Robinson?
This guy had over 1,400 yards from scrimmage, I think, double-digit touchdowns from scrimmage. He's not just going to go away. He's still going to be their lead ball carrier and goal line back. So I would say in the 5th round or later, you have to consider keeping Robinson. If it's 6th round or later, yes, because this is going to be a dual threat backfield. It's also going to drive you crazy. So, if you have somebody, if you're going to go between, say, Robinson and Mike Davis, I would take Mike Davis because
Robinson or Gaskin.
That's a real tough one, but I'm going to lean Gaskin just because I know he's the number 1 there. Whereas with Robinson and ETN, it's going to be unpredictable from week to week.
Okay, fair enough. Let's talk a couple of veteran wide receivers. Seattle Seahawks. Tyler Lockett. I think a grossly underrated wide receiver. All the attention goes to DK Metcalf. Tyler Lockett, let's call it round. All these guys to me are all around round 4 potentially. Tyler Lockett, keep or not keep?
And check out my new scouting report on Lockett on Seahawks.com, Fantasy Insider, where I break down the entire position. Look at Lockett, who had 3 huge games last year. He had a 53-point game against the Cardinals in PPR. That was the 3rd greatest fantasy performance in Seahawks history behind Steve Largent and Sean Alexander. And he also had 2 30-plus point games. But then there was inconsistency in the second half when the Seahawks offense stalled. And 2 years ago, he got hurt in the second half. Huge first half, not good second half the last 2 half seasons. The second half of 2020 and 2019. I expect more consistency this year. So I say that Seattle offense I talked about. So I say, yes, he's a keeper. He's my 20th ranked seasonal wide receiver.
Final player on our list before we call it a day, Amari Cooper of the Dallas Cowboys. Everybody's in love with CeeDee Lamb. Amari Cooper had some offseason injury issues. Amari Cooper, let's say round 4, round 5, keep or not keep?
You can't overreact to a shorter-term injury in a keeper or dynasty league. And we still have to remember, there were good reports on Cooper recently. It's not like he's going to miss the entire year. Mm-hmm. Remember, CeeDee Lamb plays on the slot. They still have Cooper and Gallup on the inside. That could be the best passing offense in the NFC this year. And remember, without Dak Prescott, he caught a career-high 92 balls last year. So let's not dock Amari Cooper too much. I still have him ranked wide receiver 19 in seasonal. I'd say if you get a chance to keep him for round 5 or on, you still have to strongly consider it. A lot of people are down on Amari Cooper. I'm not too down on him.
There you go. Scott had it there. And I kind of agree with everything he said there today. Guys, as always, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. The King and Pocket Aces. Follow Scott on Twitter at Scott E. The King. Follow me on Twitter at Aniano Fantasy. And like we said at the beginning, head over to RotoBaller.com. Check out all the great content there. Scott, this has been fun as always, my friend. You're the best. I look forward to doing this again next week. To all our listeners, thanks for watching. Stay smart. Stay safe. We'll see you next time. Have a good one, folks.